Welcome to today's live stream. My name is Mark Slater with Prime Spine Consulting. And are you getting inconsistent personal injury leads? Are you wondering where all your referrals are? Well, if you do these two things, this can separate yourself in the market so that you can dominate the PI market in your city. Let's talk about these two things to dominate personal injury. Well, let's talk about the one thing that these attorneys care about more than anything on these cases is money, the settlement. How much can we get for this injury through documented evidence of chiropractic and medical care? If it's not in your notes, if it's not documented objectively, it never happened. So the two things that can help you, especially as a chiropractor, to not only get more referrals, but also get your bill paid, is to offer these two things. Number one, the ability for you as the chiropractor to find hidden injuries that most doctors miss. For instance, if you're just a sprain, strain, whiplash doctor and all your diagnoses are whiplash, sprain, strain, myositis, myalgia, cervicalgia, I've got some bad news. You are not very useful in the personal injury market. Doctors that add more value to the case are the ones that are going to win the game. And when I say add more value, I'm not talking treat somebody for 8 months. That's not adding value. That's over treating. Number one, do you take flexion extension films of your injured PI patient, lateral cervical flexion films, and then have them evaluated for ligament instability? Some people call it laxity. Attorneys hate that term because they think juries think laxity means relaxed, hanging out at the beach with a margarita and a beer, instability, injury. Those are the terms you want to use. So if you have them objectively drawn up, the lines of mensuration on those flexion extension films, and you find a 3.5 millimeter translation from the bone above compared to the one below, that's a 25% permanent whole body impairment. That's a permanent injury. That can get policy limits on a case. So if you're not doing those x-rays, you're leaving a lot of money on the table and you're not giving the patient the best care they can get. And then so the value that this has is, let's say the MRI comes back and there's no disc herniation anywhere, cervical, thoracic, lumbar, no disc herniation. The doctor that went this extra step to take those flexion extension x-rays and have them evaluated objectively for ligament instability with a 3.5 millimeter translation, and that could be at multiple levels, C3, C4, C4, C5. That is how you find a permanent injury to help the patient get better care, help the attorney get a better settlement, and help you get your bill paid. So that's the first thing to dominate. Go deeper in your diagnosing, finding hidden injuries most doctors miss, ligament instability. A lot of different people out there that can do this. You can even do it yourself. A chiropractor is allowed to do the lines of mensuration and write a report according to the AMA guidelines. A chiropractor can do this. The second thing to dominate your market in personal injury is the ability for you to screen for a concussion or traumatic brain injury. If you are not screening for concussion or traumatic brain injury, you are doing your patient a disservice. You're doing the lawyer a disservice, because there are chiropractors out there and other physicians, especially neurologists, that are screening for traumatic brain injury. When I say screen for it, not just have the questionnaire in their paperwork and asking them, are you confused, irritable, and just asking them for their symptoms. Those are just subjective remarks from the patient. That's not a TBI protocol. Having a screening test like the impact test, cryos test, CNS vital signs, sport gait. These are all cognitive concussion tests you can do in your office on a computer, right? We're not talking about structural tests like an MRI, CT scan, neuroquant. Those show structural abnormalities of the brain. But your patient can also have cognitive deficits, behavioral deficits, and that's what those 3 or 4 screening tests that I just told you about measure. And it's just taken on a computer in your office by the patient. Now that's just the first step. After the patient takes this impact test or the cognitive screening test, it has to be interpreted by the proper medical specialist. So in my program, we get you a medical neuropsychologist to do a telemedicine visit with your patient, assess their cognitive test, and write the report. Now you have documentation of an objective traumatic brain injury that meets a med-legal DAW-BEAR standard in your state, an FDA-approved screening test interpreted by the proper medical specialist. Sorry, chiropractors, your opinion just doesn't hold up in court. You have to have that screening test interpreted by the proper medical specialist. Now, once we have this positive traumatic brain injury, we're not going to treat it. That is out of scope for a chiropractor. That needs to be referred out to a neurologist. So this gives you the opportunity to work with the medical community, hook up with a neurologist that knows about these cognitive tests that can provide the treatment. Now you sound different than other chiropractors in the market. You offer different things, and not just any things. Things that increase the value of the case with objective findings if they're there. Finding hidden injuries like ligament instability of the cervical spine by taking special x-rays and having them interpreted and drawn the lines of mensuration according to the AMA guides. It's hard for defense attorneys to argue published standard of care like the AMA guidelines. And then the second diagnostic process that you can do as a chiropractor is the ability for you to screen for traumatic brain injury. 50% of these injuries are missed in emergency rooms where they have trauma-trained physicians. They're not screening for it in an emergency room. And over 50% of people that do get this diagnosis don't follow up for treatment. You can be the answer to this issue of traumatic brain injury. So those are the two things to dominate in PI when you're talking to these attorneys, because they're the ones that are going to give you the most referrals. They dominate the marketing. Talk about the services that can help not only the patient recover and uncover hidden injuries, but those injuries can increase the value of a case. And that's what attorneys really care about. If I send my client to this doctor, does this doctor know how to maximize policy value or value of the case, and maybe help me get policy limits? And a good attorney on a traumatic brain injury confirmation can pop policy limits and get future medicals for their client with an FDA-approved test interpreted by the proper medical specialist. Now, on a basic level, that's all you need. So you can have a structural exam, like an MRI, CT scan, DTI, or neuroquant to show structural abnormalities. You can have a cognitive test, like impact, crave, CNS vital signs, sport gait. You can have vestibular or oculomotor tests like eye box or right eye. Those will show oculomotor deficits. Oculomotor deficits are the #1 symptom of a possible traumatic brain injury. That comes from a diplomate of neurology. I'm not saying that, I'm quoting my neurologist friend. The eyes are the window to the soul is what he likes to say. So you have structural tests, cognitive behavioral tests, vestibular test, and coming soon, there's gonna be a blood test that finds 4 blood biomarkers that increase after a traumatic brain injury. So the more objective findings you can line up that proves this injury has occurred, you are going to be a very attractive doctor to every single attorney, not just in your town, in your city, but in your whole state. We're in a digital society. You should be marketing to every single attorney statewide because they get clients everywhere in your state. So those are the two things to dominate PI in your market. If you're in YouTube, like and subscribe to my channel. I produce a long form video every week to help you grow your personal injury business. My name is Mark Slater with Prime Spine Consulting. Have a great day.